Hey everybody, Chad Schimmel back in the shop, and today I want to show you a simple fix. And if you're new to pen making or you've had this trouble, it can be quite frustrating, but it's actually a pretty easy thing to do as long as you know what you're doing. So I'm going to show you how to fix the threads on a junior series pen, and I'll give you a couple other little tips that I've used and learned over the years through trial and error and mistakes. So let's get started. So the problem we're having with this pen, and this was actually sent to me by another pen maker that didn't know what was wrong with it, is when you put the cap on, there's just nothing there. There's nothing to screw into, and it just feels unusual. And what has happened is the threads inside the coupler of the cap have come loose. The plastic sleeve has come loose from the metal part. And I'll zoom in here in just a minute and show you what that looks like. But typically, I see this from a couple of reasons. A lot of times if I'm at a show and someone who shouldn't be touching these pens picks it up, they'll either pull it off and then quickly realize they did something wrong and shove it back in. And there's two things that can happen. Either the threads can strip, or they can break the coupler loose inside of there, forcing it up into the tube, and then it has nothing to thread into. Now, that's usually the case. Another case, and it's rare, more rare, is somebody can thread it on, and for some reason, I'm sure if you guys do shows or sell your pens, you've seen this, somebody will thread it on, and then they'll just keep going and going like it's infinite, and they'll actually break it loose because these threads are a metal base, whereas the coupler is plastic. So the weak point is that glue spot inside there, and they'll just crack it loose, and then you can wind up with a situation where the body spins and doesn't come out or go in. It's just stuck spinning because it's threaded in and now it's stuck in there and not moving. So let's show you how to fix that. So to do this, you just need a couple of simple tools. A punch set, which is pretty necessary in a lot of what we do, and then a good old-fashioned hammer. So what we've got to do is first take the cap end off, the finial end. And so you want a punch that clears the threads, doesn't mess them up, but is snug in there. Now, one thing to do is make sure your pointed end on your punch is all the way out and not in this end, because then it'll give it a little pressure. So with that in there, I'm just going to hold the cap like this in my hand with the end out of my hand, and I'm just going to tap until that comes off. So I've got my cap. I've got my cap and my clip that came off. So now that I've got the end off, you can see I can use the punch and actually push out the plastic coupler that was in there. And this one is actually pretty beat up, so that could be part of the problem. Looks like it probably cracked inside of the metal there. So the second stage is just more pen removal stuff. You want a punch that fits in the tube as good as possible. And the reason being, if your punch is too narrow, when you hammer it in there, you'll actually go inside of the metal and flare it out. And that'll just create a lot of problems, not only then, but later on. So you want to make sure that your punch is as firm as you can get it in the tube, a little bit of wobble as possible. And then same thing, just reverse, just kind of tap it out. And I don't hit it too hard, because if it's not coming out easily, it's not going to come out. So we're almost there. And again, I'm just holding the tube firmly, hopefully not damaging it. And by looking at this, I don't see any damage, and that's good. So now I've got the metal coupler, and that's exactly what happened. Was this just broke loose in there. And it actually looks like it lost a lot of the threading. So I don't know where the threading went, but the fix is simply to get a new coupler and glue it in there, and that will replace the original threads, and then just reassemble as normal. One thing I'm going to do, because this isn't my pen and I don't know where the kit came from, is I'm just going to check these threads to make sure they're the same. And they appear to be. So we should be good to go by just gluing this back in and then reassembling. Now, one thing I wanted to mention here's a couple of different kinds. One thing I wanted to mention is whenever you get a junior kit or even a senior size kit, one thing I like to do is check this seam where the metal meets the plastic, because it is two different materials and it is glued together. There's a couple of things to consider. One is the glue seam strong? So I'll give it a little tug, make sure it's not loose, because occasionally you'll get one that's just not glued in good and it just comes right off. Another thing I'll do, and this one is a perfect example, probably can't see it in the video, but it's got big mounds of glue around it. So what I'd like to do is either take an X-Acto knife or a little Dremel and just quickly go around it and remove any of those lumps of glue. And the reason being is when you go to insert that into the tube, if you have a delicate tube like a watch part or something that's got cast clear resin, if you've got a big lump of glue on one side and you don't remove it and you press it in there, it's going to move the blank apart from the tube and create gaps, and you'll get that hazy, clear look that you don't want. So making sure that this is flat all the way around is key. That's probably my biggest thing, is making sure that those are clean when I do that. And then secondly, especially after you clean it with either a knife or sandpaper or a grinder, you want to double check and make sure that your glue joint is still strong. So just give it, a test that way. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this back in. I'll let it dry and then reassemble, and this pen will be good as new and ready to go. So if you've ever had trouble with your threads, I hope that helped. Just some little tips from my experience and problems that I've run into and had to fix over time. And once you understand the way these parts work, it makes it a lot easier to put the pen together and service the pen down the road if something does get broken. So I'm Chad Schimmel. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and give me a thumbs up.